Hello, everyone. Welcome to our focus forum, our January focus forum. We are just opening this up. Turns out this forum is usually done as a meeting. And for some reason, I scheduled this as a webinar. So we are going to promote all of you to panelists. So welcome. And Alicia Ernest, our program director, is going to be doing that. So I see people coming in. And because we would all like you to participate, or particularly if you choose to. And we'll get started in just a minute as we get people promoted to a panelist. I hope you have been all enjoying January. The month is going by so quickly. It's hard to believe we're already in the 19th. We are in the 19th, January 19th, right? Yes. And I hope you're having a good first part of the new year. So while I begin with my introduction, so as you know, or perhaps you know, I'm Rita Riker, and I am president of Focus Greater Syracuse. So we're glad to see you here today. As I'd mentioned, January forum, again this year, we're using this forum as a way to identify topics that are interested to you, the folks that participate in these forums. So we continue to find these forums, these January forums, very useful to us and valuable. And this past year, for instance, 6 out of our 9 forums were based on topics that we heard last January. Those topics included youth violence, early childhood trauma, public transit, fair housing, sustainability, and building our Central New York workforce for growth. So as we listen to you, and we try to provide topics that are of interest specifically to you. As I mentioned, we had scheduled this as a webinar, but you're all being promoted to a panelist. So welcome as panelists. Several of you have already submitted suggestions for future topics, and we thank you for those. We'll call on many of you to briefly introduce your recommended topic, including who you might like to hear from on the topic. Not necessarily a name, just an organization, whatever you wish to tell us about the topic that you've chosen. If you have a topic and have not yet submitted it to us and would like to consider it, please use the chat button to add that topic to our list. And then at the end of the session, just before we end, I'm going to ask all of you to list in the chat up to 3 topics that are particularly of interest to you. So wait for that, listen carefully, and you can decide who you might want to vote for in terms of some topics that are of interest. So a few ground rules, pretty similar to in the past. Please mute your audio when you're not speaking so that we don't hear any background noise. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand, either using the Zoom raise hand function or just raising your hand, and we'll try to call on you. And as always, we ask you to be respectful of everyone's opinions. We're scheduled for an hour today, and so let me turn this over now to board member Brian Hoke, who's going to lead our discussion. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Rita. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for participating in our traditional January Forum on Forums, our meta karaoke experience where we get to hear from you, and you help us do market research on how best this program can serve the needs of the community. And as Rita said, we've had wonderful suggestions, many of which we've carried out, but looking forward to hearing from you folks about what you think would make for an engaging 1-hour topic in this fashion. It might be virtual, it might be in person, but I can read off some of the ones we have, but I know I could see from looking at the panelists, you participants, some of the folks who submitted them in advance are here. Would anybody like to, by voice, share a suggestion for one of this year's forums? Nancy, was that a hand raise?
I'm never shy. I didn't submit one. But the topic that concerns me, because I work in the healthcare space, is really the capacity of our healthcare system. I mean, the current state and the capacity, as especially now, period, the manpower supply is just not there across levels of care. But obviously, if there's the population growth that we're looking at, from babies to long-term care, primary care, mental health, you name it, it
Would get worse.
concerns me.
Got it. What would that look like, Nancy? Who would be, I mean, in a blue sky scenario, who would we hear from
Right.
about that?
Well, great to have the presidents of some of the key medical organizations. There's also I think there are experts in the region that can speak to this from an independent voice and
Mhm.
talk about some of the challenges.
And I presume not just hospitals, but nursing schools, medical schools, those who fill the pipeline of those.
Well, yeah, that can speak to that. Obviously, we can't have 27 people on a panel, but yeah, I think the important thing, because it's the first time that folks would have done something like this, is to get the kind of the bigger picture. And then there would always be opportunities for other forums that drill down more, but I think the bigger picture is what's needed.
Got it. I mean, I know.
I welcome people to push back that are here that are in.
Yeah, no, I
this
think it's a
space.
great topic. I know mental health has in particular been a challenge, but it sounds like from what you're saying,
Even
great-
radiologists are being bought up by private enterprises and leaving the region. So it's across the board.
Got it. Any other thoughts from folks to add to that, to expand upon it, to, as Nancy said, push back upon it, about that as a topic? Any suggestions on somebody who might be a good speaker on that topic? I can offer nothing in that, but other than that, I think it sounds interesting, and I'd like to see it.
I'm
Right.
sorry. Hi, everyone. It's Elisa. Happy New Year.
Hey, Elisa.
I came in a few minutes late. I had some technical issues. So that black cloud follows me into 2024. I cannot get computers to work. I missed what the topic actually was that you were discussing.
Sure. Nancy, you want to share that again?
In brief, talking about the state and the capacity of our healthcare system broadly defined across the board to serve the people that live here now, much less the population growth that's anticipated.
And in particular, the workforce thereof, right? I mean, by capacity, that sounds like to me, but I'm asking the
Well,
biggest.
it's actually infrastructure as well as workforce, manpower.
Cool.
I mean, I actually am impressed that the amount of money that's rightfully going into encouraging people to create pipelines into industry now. Well, we could create the same kind of pipelines into healthcare.
Got it.
Resources.
Cool. Any other thoughts on that topic? And feel free to put things in chat too. Sorry, go ahead. Somebody had a point.
You had asked about potential speakers, and I've got connections with people at St. Joe's and Upstate and Helio Health, but I don't know if that's really what you're looking for, speaker wise.
We got your number for if we start to develop this topic. I'm a board member of Focus, so that's why I say it that way. So thank you.
Yeah, and this is kind of an inside baseball, how the sausage gets made process, right? I mean, a peek into a lot of this is brainstorming, and sometimes it might be, boy, this person is maybe not in her or his title capacity the best person for this, but they're a very dynamic speaker and they bring with them a long history on the subject. So, it's very, very open and very not casual, but informal in how we put these together. So great, thank you. Other thoughts on that topic? If not, other suggestions for forums you'd like to see in this upcoming year? Anybody? I can share some of those that were sent in, but even better if we can hear from people who were here to share their thoughts.
Brian, I think Yana had submitted something related to new businesses and funds available. Yana, you want to talk about that? Can you get it yourself off mute? Let me see if I ask you to unmute whether that helps.
Said our audio is not working.
Oh, okay, well.
Well, I can, let me see if I can find that. It was the digital literacy lesser known grants and support for aspiring small business owners. Rita, was that the?
Yes, yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's something we've touched on, I think, peripherally, but certainly not in that direct aspect. Yeah, I think that'd be great. And I think you had, Yana, in your, which presenters do you want to hear from in 2024? Newly elected politicians and newly elected government officials serving in their first year term. That alone, separate from and the other suggestion, I think would be fascinating to hear what that's like, to have first year, whether it be county, state, federal folks who are serving would be really any thoughts on the, excuse me, the support for aspiring small business owners? Certainly there's an infrastructure here in our community for that. What it is, I think would be an interesting thing to share that perhaps a lot of people don't know about. And other efforts that are either in development or relatively new, I think would be very interesting. But other thoughts on that topic?
I just totally agree. I would just suggest that the Wise Women's Business Center is an example of this, but it's, I think because again of the growth and of the trickle down effect, I think there's going to be way more opportunities for small businesses. And I think it's a great topic, Yona. I think I got that pronounced right.
Yeah, is it Yona?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for clarification.
Of course, Center State CEO, they have some programs and support for startups, Allen Family Foundation. And then Ricky Brown, he works with people who are trying to get their women and minority-owned business certification.
Mhm.
And that process is, I tried to help somebody with that, and I am so glad that he is available to refer people to, because it is a bear of a process. So I know businesses who try to go through it on their own and failed, and then once you've failed, trying to get back into it is another process in itself. So I think making sure people know that those kind of resources are available too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think Center State's done a nice job of pushing into equity issues and support for people of all different backgrounds to start businesses, that perhaps 20, 50 years ago was certainly not the case. But yeah, that's great. I think that'd be interesting to hear from. Other thoughts on support for business or small business related topics related to or separate from this particular topic that folks would want to hear from in the upcoming year? All right, so some others that we had, and I'll reach out. I'll read a few of them and just see if anything sticks with people or strikes a chord. Efforts to reduce child poverty, Route 81 and Micron developments, certainly major existential, earth-shattering developments in our community upcoming. New funding opportunities here in our community. Homelessness, lead poisoning, and our housing crisis. Have we done in recent times lead remediation specifically just as lead? I don't remember. Anybody from Focus Board or the committee remember if that has been a specific topic that we've covered?
Yeah, I think it was. I think in fact we had Peter Dunn on speaking to this. But it was a few years back, and there's been a lot that's happened since then. Gotcha.
how nonprofits can collaborate more efficiently and effectively, break out of silos, avoid duplicating work. Food justice, an interesting topic. Housing certainly comes up often, as it should. Youth crime, education, litter, house disrepair. Organized outdoor experiences for all ages, hiking, naturalist guided tours. Zoning, building codes and enforcement, things we've touched on, but certainly there's ample opportunity to do more on that. STEAM education, the upcoming STEAM school, the more certain to start soon STEAM school, right? That we had at forum on what, a year and a half ago, but is much more close to reality. So curious if any of those topics folks want to react to or share their own thoughts. I could talk the whole hour. I mean, I have no problem listening to myself, but you know, that better for us and for you if you don't have to listen to me for 55 minutes.
Dallas, I think you had some suggestions, didn't you, that you want to talk about those?
Yes, I was hoping you might just have the list in front of you. I think restorative justice was one of the issues. There are several neighborhood groups, and some of them are interested in doing kind of a neighborhood watch situation. And I feel like some of those groups I would be more interested in seeing engage in neighborhood watch activities than others, based on kind of the topics of concern that their members bring up. And I feel like if there was an opportunity for everybody to attend some sort of restorative justice, alternatives to the police kind of training, that those groups might be more effective in really community versus just over policing.
Are there groups you wouldn't mind mentioning that you think would be, you know, not to cast aspersions on those that you don't mention, but you know, ones that you think might be more rather than less engaging or effective in such a forum?
I know that Northside Futures, which is hosted by the Northside Learning Center, has been very active in trying to do more training around community conflict resolution and community building. And I think they've got a good start versus maybe the any of the three Washington Square groups, or the Hood Dale Street group. I think those groups probably are kind of, they've got the right idea that they would like to have more boots on the ground, more community interaction, but they tend to have complaints that make me think, put a lot of thought into what's going to build up the community versus just trying to bring in more police engagement.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
I do have a colleague or a connection with somebody who specializes in restorative justice.
Oh, great.
That if that becomes a topic, I can certainly connect everybody with.
That's great. And I, you know, not being terribly familiar, is it inappropriate for me to ask, just for you all just to share a little bit about how that works? I'd appreciate it, and perhaps there's some others here who could use a quick primer.
I would love more training on the topic.
But just in a nutshell.
I wish there were, I felt like there were resources that I could propose at those neighborhood meetings to say, hey, you should go to this workshop, or you should watch this training video, or you should bring this person in to talk first. But I just don't know the resources to do that.
Gotcha.
My rudimentary understanding of restorative justice, and please take it with a grain of salt because I'm by no means an expert, but the idea is to open up a dialogue and between the person who was the person who was, you know, assaulted or done wrong, or the crime was committed against, and the person who did the committing of the crime or did the injustice, so to speak. So it's more of a collaborative, restorative type of model to try to fix trauma before it becomes cyclical and prolonged.
Gotcha. Cool.
So instead of just throwing somebody in jail and like that's just the end of it, it's the person who was, you know, had something done against them. They have an opportunity to kind of face their accuser and air their concerns and have some type of restoration come out of it, so that that trauma from the crime or from the situation doesn't become prolonged trauma.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Like you were saying with the becoming cyclical, I think there's also a recognition like hurt people.
Right.
That like that somebody didn't steal something off my porch, like for funsies necessarily. Like, what is the key thing? What is it that they're missing that drove them to do that action, for example?
If I'm correct, I just was reminded that, you know, we've had some exposure to the peacemaking program, the Center for Social Justice or Justice Innovation. And I think that's similar, but they're looking at community, not just two individuals, but bringing people of the community together and just having open dialogue.
And again, Nancy, my understanding is that it's a spectrum, right? You can do it on a more individualized level, but you can also do it on a larger community scale.
I saw a great documentary actually last night about South Africa in, 94, 95. And, the efforts, the Truth and Reconciliation, I assume fits in this vein of a similar sort of thing yeah, I mean, just sounds like a great topic. Gets my vote for what it's worth. Other thoughts on that or on other topics, perhaps?
I mean, I'm the one who had submitted the idea about the nonprofit collaboration piece.
Yep.
Just kind of almost piggybacking off of what Nancy said, but kind of expanding on it, right? Syracuse is a small city and our resources are limited, and that, goes in the same vein when it comes to donors and resources and people willing to fund programs. And I think that there's a lot of siloing that occurs in Syracuse and a lot of duplication when it comes to services. How many coat drives are there? It's like every nonprofit and their brother is doing a coat drive or a winter hat and glove drive. And, how do we pool those resources and do some type of like epic coat drive, as opposed to these, maybe smaller ones. I don't know, just how do we utilize our resources better? How do we collaborate better? To better serve the community and all of the needs that are already here and will be coming as a result of, expanded growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kelly, I would think the foundations in town would be a likely source of some speaker. Are there other organizations or individuals or just types of role that you think would contribute well to that type of forum?
I don't have any specific thoughts off the top of my head, but I think the places to look is to try to identify personnel in the nonprofit space who have accomplished this, right? Like, so identifying either organizations as a whole or people within those organizations who have been able to kind of pull off like a really expansive collaboration or a really successful collaboration. Off the top of my head, I don't have any great suggestions, but that's where I would start looking.
Cool. Do you think merger? I've volunteered for a long time in the human services not-for-profit sector, and for years the state was, really pushing, state being a big funder of those services, really pushing not-for-profits to combine, right? To streamline, simplify. I guess one mechanism by which the challenge you're expressing can be addressed, but not certainly the only one. But would you think that would be part and parcel of this, or would be an interesting?
I think that could be an interesting person or opinion or per, perspective to have on the panel as an option, right? That's not going to be right for every nonprofit or every cause, but it's going to be very right for some people. And maybe that is the answer that, people need to kind of explore. And I'm sure there's some stigma attached to that, right? I failed, so now I have to merge with somebody else. Oh no. And there's this, and I think that's where the silo piece comes in too, is that without realizing it, people get very, they're kind of greedy, right? Like, this is my mission and my nonprofit, and I started it because of like this, my cause. And then you become, kind of siloed because of that. So I think having somebody on a panel who has gone through a merger, and been able to come out the other side, whole and still serving people, which really at the end of the day is what we're supposed to be doing is, nonprofit space. I think that would be a great option.
Cool. Not to cut off conversation on this, but just quickly for the folks who looks like just come in recently, we're just brainstorming ideas for potential forum topics in the coming calendar year. So welcome everybody who just came in. Sorry, I cut somebody off.
Oh, I was just gonna say that while, the idea of people should merge to be more efficient, I also think of the CNY food bank as a good example. Like, the answer was not for all of the food banks to become one food bank. It was just for all of those food banks to have one place that they went to consolidate, the buying power or the fundraising power, so they can all benefit from that. But it doesn't mean that they're all one thing. You can still have food banks that cater to different groups or serve different areas. They don't have to be the same thing. So I think that's an important, perspective to bring to the forum.
Cool. All right, that's great. And let's see, Elisa Morales put in the chat that the Human Services Leadership Council has a newly reformed collaborations committee. Great. Sounds like they would have an interesting take, an informed take on this this topic. And Barbara, sorry to hear that you can't use the audio and keep getting kicked off. If we can help, we'll certainly do what we can. Other thoughts on this topic first, and then we'll talk about others. Any other suggestions that would add to this topic as a forum?
Well, I'd be interested. Elisa, do you know any more about the collaboration effort that's being made?
So I do know that this was a pretty active committee in Human Service Leadership Council in the past that made a lot of progress, but then it kind of fell by the wayside. So that's why we just had our first meeting this month, and they're looking to continue that good work. So I think that a lot of the information that we gathered there could be brought here and be shared, whether we send it to Brian and then Brian emails it to us, or you could join your voices as well if you're part of Human Service Leadership Council to be part of, that new collaboration. It definitely was successful before, so I really think new energy is gonna give us a good result.
Oh, that's
Thank
great.
you.
Nice to see that's happening.
And
Any
then
other thoughts on this topic? Sorry, Rita?
Not this topic, a different one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
No, so something I've been pushing, not just with Human Service Leadership Council, which they're kind of looking into it now, but I don't know about any of you, but disaster preparedness and response for the entire Onondaga County is just a mystery to me. I know that when I was at Vieira House maybe 15 years ago, we started that conversation with the county. We got a nice tour of the 911 emergency center that's below ground. And that was the last we heard of it 15 years ago. So I don't know what Onondaga County's plan is. We're all part of this bigger picture. I think we should be informed of what is the county response? How do we play into that? And why are we not included in that information? There seems to be like a disconnect there with human service agencies. And we're the ones who are serving the community, who are going to be calling us or coming to us. If some sort of disaster happened, they're coming to us for help. And we may have a plan within our own agencies, which is really important, but to know what is the response and what are the resources available in the county, I think are really important. So whether Human Service Leadership Council does it or not, I think this is a great group to maybe reach out to the county and see if we could get a speaker to talk to us and see what they have to say.
And Elisa, are those disasters running the spectrum of anything of what one might think might happen? And are there specifics that
No, I think that's really the question. I think Onondaga County has some sort of plan. I'm sure the city does too. But in any kind of state of emergency, I mean, who thought we were even going to have air pollution that would affect people that don't have asthma during the course of June? And then people start calling and asking questions, even people like for us that speak Spanish, looking for some sort of help, information. And we don't even have the county really responding to any of that. So, you know, we're trying to figure out certain things and you just never know. I mean, any kind of natural disaster could happen, a terrorist attack could happen, anything that affects our community on a bigger scale. We should be part of the team that sits at the table that knows exactly what our higher leadership has planned besides our own agencies. That's just my strong opinion.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Thoughts from
Can I add that we did a forum years ago, way before COVID on this, and it was eye-opening how much is in place and how few people know about it, right? And so we had the county, we had the Red Cross, I can't even remember who else was on the panel, Poison Center. So I think this would be a great community service, and I really love your point about how can we connect the nonprofit organizations, the service organizations, so they know, you know, what their role is, what their role could be. I think that would be very timely.
And I'm sorry, I saw somebody's hand go up, wanted to come in on this.
Sorry, that was me again.
Oh, okay. And I'm sorry, your name is Nada?
Dallas, like the city.
Oh, Dallas. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Dallas, go ahead.
There's an agency called Force, focusing our resources for community resources. And they've gone through the training with FEMA, and they offer things like how to operate ham radios and how to plan for earthquakes and how to plan for floods and whatnot. And they offer a variety of trainings. I know COVID, they really took a hit during that, ironically enough. But I think maybe more collaborating with them or bringing them to the table to be a speaker would be a good place to start.
Do you have a link for them? I just kind of Googled and couldn't find them.
Yeah, Dallas, is that a standalone 501c3 not-for-profit? That's not a government entity of any flavor?
Yeah, they're a not-for-profit.
Oh, interesting.
I will get there later.
That's great. Thank you. Does Citizens Academy touch on any of this? Anybody who's
We
not
do have a session. So yeah, if that's something that you're interested in learning about, we just closed applications for the winter program, but we'll be running it again in the fall. And that's one way that you can learn about this topic. And I can certainly share presenters' contacts and get you connected virtually if you have any questions in the meantime.
Cool. And is that mostly, does Citizens Academy mostly touch on that with county officials when they do?
It's a little mix of city and county. So they usually provide their own presenters for it. I think it's a little heavier on county for the winter.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Other thoughts on this intriguing topic? All right, other suggestions?
Ryan, I see that Bill Kirchhoff is, if I'm pronouncing Kirchhoff, maybe, you'd like to see a forum on caregiver challenges. Bill, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, Bill, please.
Hi, sure. I'm part of David's Refuge, and I work with them and volunteer and on the board. One of the things we highlight are the challenges that so many of our community members face in terms of caring for either their elderly parents, their children, if they have needs. And there are a host of resources, probably one of the best places if you have challenges like that. In Onondaga County, we have so many resources like Access and David's Refuge and Arise. And I think, you know, that might be a good opportunity to do a forum.
That's great. Yeah. I remember as a board member at Access CNY, there were respite programs and a whole host of very needed, very difficult to do well, but I think the organization did them quite well programs. I think that'd be fascinating and something perhaps a lot of folks don't know about. And to your point, Bill, especially given that there are a lot of resources, would be great. Other thoughts on that from the folks who are here? Suggestions about it or ways in which we could do it even better?
I would just echo it as somebody who's worked in the respite space. Diane Napa, who started Casey's Place through Elmcrest, she might be a great resource for the panel. And just as somebody who was a caregiver, kudos Bill for advocating for us. I just think that's a great topic. So that would get my vote.
Other thoughts? Nancy, you want to just share quickly the thought you put
Well,
in?
I just think this is an area close to my heart for a lot of reasons, but the county does a substantial amount in this area. There's actually a caregiver institute, a lot of support services. ARP does a lot of support services. A lot of people don't know that an immediate caregiver can actually be reimbursed, be paid for caregiver services. So that's really, yeah, it's an area that's gotten a lot of attention thanks to Rosalind Carter way back when. But I agree that this is one that would be, hey, you can get help.
Yep. Any other thoughts on this topic? Other suggestions? Other folks you think, in addition to suggestions, folks you think would just be a good presenter? Boy, I'd like to hear from her or him. They'd be great to hear from, even if I don't care about the topic.
Can I just say that we have people on that are new to me and organizations that are newer to me. And it occurs to me that I don't think people are thinking about what their own organization does. And maybe we should learn more about neighborhood action organizations and death and dying. And I mean, I think people are thinking beyond themselves and not thinking about what they could bring to the table.
Yeah, good point. Pat yourselves on the back and speak up if you'd like to share what you could bring, because just the fact that you're here, right, differentiates you from the population at large, because you, and we appreciate it, right, took an hour from your Friday to share your thoughts about this. But any suggestions you have, even something self-serving that would help your presumably good cause, would be welcome news for us to hear.
Grace, you had listed youth, a number of things related to youth in when you were registering. Do you want to talk about that at all? And perhaps she can't. Is she having some audio issues? Okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I mean, I'll do a shameless plug if nobody else will go.
Yes, go for it.
Hope for Bereaved does grief support services, and we provide workshops in the community for organizations, companies around grief. So that's a shameless plug, but also, maybe a potential option for a forum, just grief and CNY and how different types of people deal with it. One of the things I'm actually doing is putting out a survey to the community around how diverse people grieve, right? People from different cultures and different backgrounds, so that we can start to become more inclusive and help more of our diverse city of Syracuse. So that could maybe even be something that maybe there's a forum on, or if you guys want to help me spread the word with my survey, let me know and I can pass that along to you. The HSLC group that Elisa was mentioning, I'm part of that, and they're going to be kind of helping me spread the word. So if anybody's interested in that, or interested in our workshops, or need help because somebody close to you has died, you let me know.
Kelly, is the work you say for a company, for a for-profit commercial company, would it typically be prompted by a sad event that brings
we do both. So if a company calls us and says we just had somebody in our, like an employee, pass away, we would actually go in and essentially provide grief support, counseling, or a support group free of charge for them. So most recently we did that with the young man who was shot at the charter school, the local charter school. They called us and we went and spent half a day there just doing counseling and listening to people. So that's one type of service that we do. The other type is if, for example, let's say a company or a corporation has an employee who's somebody in their family dies and they're really having a rough time. We could go in, and this is a paid workshop that we do, but we would go in and actually do like a train the trainer kind of situation, where if the colleagues and the people in charge are like, I don't know what to do with this person. And that happens a lot because grief is this really sticky subject that nobody really knows what to do with. So, I don't know what to do with them, or I don't know how to help them or support them. We could actually go in and provide like a workshop in that regard. So we do that for schools, nursing, skilled nursing areas. We do it on a bunch of different topics. Like anybody who works with clients that are potentially dealing with grief in some kind of way, we can go in and teach the people who work with those people on kind of how to respond to it.
Cool. All right. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Sounds like an interesting topic. Yeah. And we are recording this. I think Rita mentioned that at the beginning, but saving the chat and the recording for our own benefit, right? To spark our thoughts for the upcoming year. Grace, I see you're on, and sorry, it's Grace, right? I see you're on camera. Did you want to share your thought?
Yes, I really appreciate this group that you're creating because I've been around for 30 years in the community as a mental health provider. And what I find that would be helpful, like you've talked about organizing some non-for-profits. Well, how do we organize as just a community to address some of the recycling youth difficulties? My first job was case manager with Salvation Army, pregnant parenting teenagers. And there's a big percentage of them that have had family violence. We're talking over 50% of people that get married or in a relationship, they split up. The casualties are the young people that grow up. And I, as a provider, need to, of course, deal with some of the things that occur from that. So having a group or a central place where agencies, lots of agencies, deal with whether it's medical, school agency, or mental health agencies. We have dealt, when I was in different roles in the community, with that issue, but it's an issue that, where do you go to? I know Vera House was one place, but they could only do so much. But how do we own that part where we are able, as part of the restorative justice, or how do we support the most vulnerable, which are youth? At the same time as the elderly too, because the baby boomers are maturing. And so I hear a lot of stories working with family members where the elderly is more vulnerable to be caught in the middle of two siblings, of people who are also keeping them captive. That's what domestic violence, or in some way where people are held as a hostage. And because family, a lot of violence is keeping it, in a closet, we don't talk about that. How do we really help society in some way start addressing that, which involves multiple agencies? The police agencies, they definitely need support. So how do we have something that would address that?
Gotcha. Are there suggestions for speakers, for organizations, for specific topics?
There are quite a few speakers that I know of that I definitely could kind of send you an email about, Brian. But I believe that awareness is our first step, because we're all connected in some way, whether it's personally or professionally, or we're just bystanders to it. And so the legal, the medical, the school, how do we as a community organize so that those people, those vulnerable people, whether they're youth, which are treated and adultified, many of them, or the vulnerable elderly that, other people prey upon them. So it's more of ownership. We all own it because we all pay for it ultimately.
Mhm.
We all pay for it, and it's part of, we can't ignore it. How do we start that turning, get around? So I definitely will email you some ideas, Brian. But I really appreciate you, just giving me the forum to voice that, because many professionals in my field, I'm a social worker, they're so busy, whatever COVID has not helped. So the agencies, just like non-for-profits, they're pretty scattered. They're not as organized and centralized as I believe we all need to be to address something like that.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for sharing that, Grace.
And
Thoughts
then
on, go ahead,
one,
please. Yeah.
Just to add to this, on a nicer note, we also want quality of life as we're aging, baby boomers. And I don't know if any of the agencies have come across that, but I believe we also may want to have more, whether it's community center, social gathering opportunities for those people that are baby boomers. I'm the last age of baby boomers, 64. But there's so many people that would like to have a place to be and connect and feel productive and engaged. And it's like, how can we have our community do more in that area, because it affects all of us too, the quality of life, which is physical ailments, mental health ailments. We all, pay for it if, the people do not have a balance in their life to feel connected or some kind of fun, pleasurable outlets.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thoughts on Grace's thoughts, suggestions?
I'd like to endorse that from two perspectives. One, the addressing the need for more community engagement opportunities, I think ties into an idea I had written down, and I don't remember if I put it, but about the benefits of after school programs, or of generally being involved in group activities for all ages. And how can people get one started? Where could we potentially get funding for those? Because there's a number of agency groups on the north side that have an after school program, but then the kids who need their programs the most can't really afford to pay for them. But they also can't afford to just give scholarships to everybody. They have operating costs. So I think it'd be a win-win if we could find ways to support those more. And then also from the I don't remember what term you used, but for individuals who are in need or are struggling or are otherwise need assistance. There's a particular word to use, but there are individuals who are being trafficked in our community, and Helio Health is not quite the right fit, and Vera House is not quite the right fit, and Liberty Resources is not quite the right fit. And I think we need a solution for who do we call, who is going to help these individuals that have this weird collection of mental health issues and drug abuse issues and physical and emotional abuse issues. Because I get that all these places specialize in something, but there's got to be some kind of resource for people who are dealing with you know, a collection of things that are making them vulnerable. I think vulnerable populations was the word you used.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dallas. That's great. And human trafficking, right, in and of itself as a narrow niche. I mean, about which sadly I know very little, but other than every time I see a statistic, I think that can't possibly be true, but it's just daunting, right? That the numbers one sees. Great. Well, thanks for those suggestions and thoughts and expanding on Grace's thoughts.
So,
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to jump in really quick. One of the topics I did want to bring up that I would love to share information on is human trafficking. I've been a New York abolitionist and doing abolition work here in Central New York, specifically in Syracuse, for about 30 years. A lot of it and all of it actually I pretty much do voluntarily, although it does walk through the door here at La Liga as well. But we are the largest transit of modern day slavery in the Northeast coast, right here in Syracuse, New York, and Central New York. And there's reasons for that. Right now, I think about how it's winter time. The river between Canada and New York is freezing over, and slaves are actually being driven across that frozen river into New York State, and a lot of them are here. Syracuse is known for being an internet virginity exchange, and a lot of people don't know that. Virginity goes for sale just like a piece of merchandise on eBay for about $25,000 or more. And so I would love to give a presentation to this group or any group that would be interested in knowing what is the actual Syracuse connection, because we have a lot going on here and not too many people are talking about it or understanding just how serious it is. There's not a ton of resources. There's a lot more, I would say more underground resources than there are, you know, services that really know what to do if it walks through the door or how to identify it or who to connect to and that kind of thing. But I would love to have a conversation with all of you regarding that because it's very prevalent and we're centrally located. You know, we have the bus station, the train station, we have an international airport. It's really like a lot. So I have to hop off to another meeting at 1 o'clock, but I did want to get that in. So I would love to share the information I have based on my many decades of experience here. And obviously it hasn't let up. And COVID, it never stopped during COVID. It just expanded more. So yeah, definitely. I would love to share some of that information with all of you.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that now, Lisa. Appreciate that. We're coming close to time, but we do have a few minutes. If anybody would like to make some last suggestions or express either support for or even, I dare say, opposition to suggestions that were expressed before. All right, if we don't have any, Rita, do we want to move to the, hey, let's
Let's
put your
vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, please. This has been a very interesting conversation. I would appreciate it. We would appreciate if you would put in the chat from your perspective, what up to 3 topics you would most like to hear from. Today, we heard about healthcare, the healthcare system, disaster response, small business support and grants, restorative justice, nonprofit collaboration, caregiver challenges and resources, bereavement support services, youth vulnerable population support, human trafficking, and I'm probably missing some, plus others. You're certainly welcome to add to the list as you think about what you're most interested in. So please take a minute and put in the chat some of those topics that you're most interested in. We will definitely use that to plan our next our forums for this coming year. While you're doing this, and just so that we'll leave the chat open for a bit, but thank you for everyone for your participation in this. I know it was a small group. It was a little odd that we had to promote you all, but I think I'm not sure why a couple of people had some audio issues, but I don't think it was on our end. Anyway, as with all our forums, we have recorded this and we'll be posting it on our website, focussyracuse.org. Alicia, can you put in the chat an email address if people want to follow up with some information to us? What the best email address would be for us. Also, we always appreciate any donations if what you like what you've seen here and what you've participated in, and wouldn't mind throwing a few dollars our way. We would be more than happy to, or a lot of dollars. We'd be very appreciative of that. Other than that, again, thanks so much for all of your time. We appreciate it, and your experiences and knowledge of the area. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So I'm just going to leave the chat open for a bit, but feel free to leave as you wish.